Mind, an event just for you. Come, be together, and know you're not alone. And if you're new here, thanks again for joining us. Text ConnectRC to 94000 to fill out a connection card and stop by the tent to say hello and grab a gift. All right, let's get started this morning by worshiping together. Whether you're watching from home or in the sanctuary, stand with us. Let's worship Him.
Listen closely, you hear it. Oh, what a sound as broken shackles hit the floor. There's a symphony in the making. There is freedom here for the taking. Oh, what a sound as broken people are restored. Oh, what a sound. Praise be loud. In your house, let your joy break out. As our voices fill the room, do what only you can do. Here in your house, we're gonna worship you. Surely the Lord is in this place. Shout if you wanna give Him thanks. Surely the Lord is in this place. Every blood-bought saint, come and praise His name. Surely the Lord is in this place. Shout if you wanna give Him thanks. Surely the Lord is in this place. Every blood-bought saint, come and praise His name. Surely the Lord is in this place. Shout if you wanna give Him thanks. Surely the Lord is in this place. Every blood-bought saint, come and praise His name. Oh yeah, come and praise His name. Here in your house, let your praise be loud. Here in your house, let your joy break out. As our voices fill the room, do what only you can do. Here in your house, gonna worship you. Gonna worship you. Good morning. Yeah, I was just making sure y'all are still alive. All right, let's continue in worship. pretty sure y'all know this one, so I need y'all to sing with me, yeah? Who breaks the power of sin and darkness, whose love is mighty and so much stronger, the King of glory, the King above all kings, who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder.
We're trying to make it more accessible. We're trying to make it easier to see groups and see signups so that you can know all the neat things that are going on here at River City. We got a lot of stuff coming up for our women. Man, you just had your conference. I heard it was amazing. It was fantastic. I'm so excited. Ladies, we've got some stuff coming up. We've got the UR conference coming up next weekend. If you haven't had a chance to register for that or check it out, please go do so. We're going to go together as a group. We're going to go out to eat after one of the sessions, which is kind of always the best part for me in some ways. And so I'd love to have you join us. Go on there and sign up. If price is an issue, talk to me about it. We don't want that to keep you away from anything we're doing. As the announcement said earlier, our women's Bible studies start this week. We've got plenty of groups. We've got daytimes, evenings, located in homes, some here. Please go on there and consider joining a Bible study group. This is going to be a really good one. It's about courage, and who couldn't use more of that, right? And I know it seems early, but it's never too early to plan for the Jingle Bell Banquet. Jingle, right? Woo! If you've been there, you know, right? This is a great event. We've opened hostess registration. So if you are interested in hosting a table at Jingle Bell, it is December 6th this year. Mark your calendars. It's going to be epic. We would love to have you host a table. I always love seeing them. They're gorgeous, and our hostesses do such a good job. The other thing that's launching this week that is near and dear to my heart that I'm so excited about are our youth small groups. So today, our high school groups, guys and girls, and our middle school girls are going to start their small groups. The high schoolers will be here at the church. The middle school girls will be off-site. And then Wednesday is when our middle school boy groups start. I know this is a weird age. I know our kids often don't want to go to something extra, but I'm going to tell you, this will be my 10th year being involved with the girls' small groups. And small groups is where we build community. Small groups is where the connection happens for both us and our kids. So please, please, if you have a teen, encourage them, give it a try. We do serve good food. Let's get them through the doors and let's get them connected. And last but not least, after second service today, we will be having baptisms out in our courtyard area like we do every week after the second service. If you would like to be baptized, if you want to talk to somebody about being baptized, please head on out there. We would love to take care of that for you. We're going to continue in worship this morning. I love hearing all your fabulous voices as you make a joyful noise. So have a great morning. Thank you so much.
Old things have passed away. Your love remains the same. Your constant grace remains the cornerstone. Things that we thought were dead are breathing in life again. You caused your sun to shine our darkest night. Jesus, we love you. you get shy on me, lift up your song. 'Cause you got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. Come on, my soul, oh, don't you get shy on me, lift up your song. 'Cause you got a lion inside of those lungs. Get up and praise the Lord. So I throw up my hands, praise you again and again. 'Cause all that I have is a hallelujah, hallelujah. And I know it's not much, but I'm nothing else fit for a king, except for a heart singing hallelujah, Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for what you do in our life, whether we know it or whether we don't. We just thank you. We thank you for what you do in others' lives. It doesn't always have to be for us. I know there's times where we spend a lot of time thinking about ourselves. Maybe today is the day that where we give everything to you. We stop thinking about ourselves. We start thinking about you. We just ask that whatever you have, you set aside for us. And may today be the day that we enjoy that. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Sitting on top of each other and loving it. That's what we do, right? I'm grateful that you're here. We begin each week with our confession. And our confession is it's a declaration. It's a statement. It is about grace. It's about freedom, as we've been talking about for the last several weeks. We're going to kind of wrap that up today. But it is our story. Our confession as his church is that we're badly broken. Yes, you are. Grace and peace to you. So this is the last week in our Long Walk to Freedom series. It's not the last day in our Long Walk to Freedom. It's not like today we're going to arrive and we never have to think about that again. But we end where we began. Galatians 5, verse 1. For freedom, Christ has set us free. Stand firm then and don't submit again to a yoke of slavery. The goal of our long walk to freedom is freedom. The goal of our discipleship, the goal of our adventure in Jesus is freedom. To live free in a manner and a degree of freedom that can't be attained or achieved by other means. They don't come from other ways. It's not a national thing. It's not a heritage thing. It is not anything other than something that God works in us, works into our lives. It is free from having to have a mask. We are free to walk around in the world exactly as we are and exactly growing. We have the freedom to grow, to change, to be different, not by the force of our will, but by being transformed. As we begin to bring our minds in order, right? What does Romans 12 say, right? Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. As we begin to think about life and about the world in the way that Christ does, we begin to be transformed. We begin to believe there is enough, so I don't have to be afraid of scarcity. And when you remove fear from your heart, from your mindset, your feelings change, your choices begin to change. Then your body begins to change. You begin to have a different kind of posture and presence in the world. Then your relationships change, and we end up being free. We are free to live a life in our soul that is integrated, where our bodies, what our body wants, these physical desires that we have, and our mental drives and things, those aren't separated. They're not different, but they work together, and we can live this beautifully free and fully alive soul. And the only way that we've said we've kind of been getting to, the only way that we can experience that true soul freedom is through surrender. And this is the counterintuitive part, right? Like, we live in a world that says freedom comes when you fight for it, right? So you've got to fight for freedom, and you've got to fight to be loose of all of those things. But what we've seen in the kingdom of God, freedom begins with the awareness, I am not God. Which means there will necessarily be things in this world that are absolutely outside of my control. And that's what we hide from, right? Like, we put on the mask and say, no, I can handle this. No, it's going to be okay. But when we begin and just go, look, the world is a big, scary place, and there are things that I don't have any control over, the weather. I don't have control over how other people behave. I don't have control over how other people treat each other. I don't have control over most of those things. And as scary and as anxious-making as that is, it is reality. Because once we begin to live in and acknowledge that reality, right, that I'm badly broken, then we can come to wrestle with this idea that there is a God who is really good and who is really powerful. And that is the God that we surrender to, the God who is good, the God who is for me. And what happens then is, if God is good, then following God leads to what? Goodness and freedom. And that's the thing that we often have a difficult time wrapping our brains around. That as God calls us and leads us away from, whether it's a religion based on ourselves or it is like academic, right, where I think, therefore I am, and that is the whole, this total of everything that I am. As we move out of those places, you just got to know it's crazy making. It makes us anxious. It makes us uncomfortable. It makes us feel like we're losing grip on control in the world. But listen, control is a myth. It is a reality. We have a God who is good, who is big, and his desire for you is good. And what he wants to do is lead you away from the fear and the slavery that comes from all of those things. But the important thing is we have to surrender to what God leads us into, what God calls us to, even if I don't understand it. Even if I don't fully know right now what everything is going to look like. And even if it doesn't feel good. That's the hard part, right? When we go that the measure of how God leads us and the way that he leads us into won't always be the thing on the surface that makes us feel most comfortable. That it doesn't feel good. In fact, God may even for a season or for forever ask us to say no to those things in us that just feel really good. And you're just like, well, why would you want to take that away from us? Because the idea is in following him, there is always something better. So I want to cast these last 6 weeks that we've been talking, including this week, in terms of kind of the greater, in terms of the bigger, right? We've talked about these last 6 weeks are the process kind of getting free, right? In a very condensed kind of way, this kind of series was kind of developed with the 12 steps of like Alcoholics Anonymous in mind, right? I came to admit that my life that I was powerless, right? I came to believe that there was a God who could restore my life to sanity. I made a decision to turn my life on my will over to him. I did a searching and fearless moral inventory, right? Like all of these things, these steps, that's the process. I do want to let you know for the next 4 weeks, starting next week, we're going to talk about some habits, the practices that we can use to help us on those ways. Some people call them spiritual disciplines, but that sounds heavy, and I want to like lure you in and do like the bait and switch thing on you. So we're going to call them habits, right? And we all kind of know what that is. But we're going to talk about some very intentional and specific and deliberate practices that we can take that will help us walk out this process. And then after that, we're going to talk about a power, right? Because, listen, I want to give you some insight into freedom. I am not even capable of changing my own heart. I'm not very good at it. I always want what's wrong, right? And I want to have that. And I believe that we can grow in that, but we really are free from having to change our own heart or other people's hearts. What we can do is choose to be in the place where Jesus is, to think the things that Jesus invites us to think, to go the places that he would go. And as that happens, well, like we said in Romans 12, we are transformed as our minds are renewed. So what we want to do today is I want to close with just a story. And listen, this isn't a new story. If you've been around, I teach on this. It's one of my favorite. I think for me, it's one of the most just compelling pictures of what Jesus looks like in kind of like a high leverage, high kind of pressure, grace necessary kind of situation. We're going to be in John chapter 4. And so as we look at that, the thing I like about this is a story really of freedom and slavery, oppression, kind of this bondage that we've been talking about right next to each other, right? And so as we go through this story, there's kind of lots of different ways that we can look at that. The thing that we need to know about the woman that we're going to encounter, this Samaritan woman, the thing that you have to understand is Samaria and Jerusalem were enemies. It is much kind of it would have been much like the situation in the Middle East right now with kind of Israel and Palestine. They don't just taunt each other. They don't just have like the mayors have a taco contest where the loser has to eat the other's tacos or something like that. It was a deeply entrenched hatred for each other. That Jewish people, purebred Jewish people, would have seen the Samaritan people as mongrels, right? Like truly just disgusting, okay? So what we have to do is as we read this, we have to acknowledge and recognize that in some way before God, we all kind of stand in this woman's place. But what I want to invite you to do is, have you ever been in a place where you just felt overlooked and outside? Have you ever been in a meeting like where you walk in the door and conversation stops and whatever that was about, it was about me? Have you ever felt insecure? Have you ever felt, not maybe just insecure, but unliked? Have you ever shared an opinion that drew somebody's wrath? Okay, so that's where this woman would have been, and that's the posture that she would have been in. And I want you to identify with that, and then I want you to watch Jesus. Always, that's our key, right? That's the ticket. Always watch Jesus, because the question is, what does Jesus say to those who are outside? What does Jesus say to the people who are overlooked, right? So we start in John chapter 4 in verse 1. When Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard he was making and baptizing more disciples than John, talking about John the Baptist right there, there's this parentheses, though Jesus himself was not baptizing, but his disciples were, Jesus left Judea and he went again to Galilee, and this verse 4 is great. He had to travel through Samaria. Now I'm going to put a map up on the screen. I think it's going to be right up here. And what this map is going to show us is you're going to look at Samaria, right? Do we have the map? Did I do that? It's on the over here. Oh, good. There you can see it, right? You can see kind of Samaria. And Jesus was in the north by the Sea of Galilee. And he's going to come. Look like you just go, oh, yeah, he had to go through Samaria. It's directly south. The thing is, at the time, the Samaritan people were so offensive to the Hebrews, to the Jewish people, that most of them, specifically religious leaders like Jesus, would have walked due east and then due south in order to absolutely avoid the Samaritan people. This was not getting caught on the bad side of town, but walking hundreds of miles out of your way in order to not. So when it said he had to go through Samaria, he didn't actually have to, and in fact, most people didn't. So now the question is, as we read the rest of the story, what was it in Samaria that Jesus had to go to and Jesus had to see? They would have had to take a 3-day walk through mongrel territory. In verse 5, so Jesus came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the property that Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, worn out from his journey, sat down at the well. It was about noon. He'd been walking all day, and he was tired, and he was thirsty. So what do? You go to a well. Verse 7, now a woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus says, give me a drink. Now, this is a translation of Greek. It sounds very bossy, and I'm like, Jesus, you're very bossy to this poor woman, right? Like, why are you? You can imagine that this was framed as a request. Hey, can you get me something to drink? Hey, It's been a long walk. Here I am in the middle of day at noon, which, by the way, lady, why are you here in the middle of the day? Why are you the only one here? You've got to assume that everybody in town needed water, right? So this is the old watering hole. Well, why would this woman be there alone? Well, the easy answer is because everybody else had gone earlier in the day. And she took the late shift where she could come to the well by herself. You ever felt like that? Shame? Guilt? Put on a mask? I'd rather just not have to have the hard conversation. I'd rather just not answer that question. But here's Jesus says, will you give me a drink? Because his disciples had gone into town to buy food. So Jesus set this up, that it's just him and just her. This is why Jesus had to go to Samaria. Listen, friend, I want to tell you something. If you ever think that the thing that you're wrestling with, or the thing that you're dealing with, or the thing that you've walked through, or the thing that marks you or defines you, if you ever think that makes you too far gone, I want to tell you, Jesus is willing to walk many days out of his way and frame a meeting with you as an obligation that he is eager to make. He wants to be where you are. I don't know who's told you different, but I want to tell you what we see in Jesus is Jesus going out of his way. And listen, this is a very odd encounter. It's an odd time of the day. It's in an odd place. Jesus isn't supposed to be there. She's not supposed to be there. And he makes this odd request. And we know that it's odd, right? Because what does verse 9 say? How is it that you, a Jew, ask for a drink from me, a Samaritan woman, she asked. For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jews don't associate with Samaritans. Men, religious men, rabbis, they don't associate with women. And you certainly don't go out of your way, except here is Jesus. This is what we have to confront. However we want to define them and us, those categories didn't exist to Jesus. We find Jesus seeking out the ones who are outside and the ones who are outcast. And so what we know is, what we can identify is that as Jesus leads us to himself and as he calls him to himself, the thing that's been behind the thing is, if you ever want to know who's really free, it's Jesus. When Jesus said it was for freedom that he set us free, and then we saw Jesus saying last week, saying, come to me, all you who are weary, and I'll give you rest for your soul. Jesus is a picture of what real freedom looks like. And what we have to contend with, right? Because later we're going to have to choose. Do we really want the freedom that Jesus offers? Because when we chase freedom in Jesus, chasing freedom will lead us to unlikely people and unexpected places, which means you're not likely going to be very comfortable on this journey. I wish I could tell you otherwise. I wish I could tell you that if you just follow Jesus, that he'll make you rich, that he'll make you happy, that everything that's ever been in your heart, I wish I could just promise you your best life now, right now. But what I can offer you in the name of Jesus is freedom. And that freedom will expect itself around unlikely people. If there's a group of people that you just go, no, I can't. No, I won't. No, they don't. If you insist on those, if those become idols, then you'll ultimately find yourself not able to follow Jesus any further, because he goes there and he leads us there. Jesus went after people that others ignored. Now, let's acknowledge this is awkward. It's just him and her. It's in the middle of the day. She very obviously went out of her way so that she wouldn't have to deal with anybody. And now here's a guy, and not just a guy, but a Jewish guy. And Jewish guys don't typically treat those women pretty well. And then he's talking to her, and he's asking her for something. This is weird. So what happens when, as you're following Jesus, you encounter weirdness? What do you do when it's just awkward? When an issue comes up and you're just like, oh, dude, I don't want to talk about that. Look at Jesus. What did Jesus do? Verse 10, Jesus answered, if you knew the gift of God and who is saying to you, give me a drink, you would ask him and he would give you living water. Now, we know what Jesus is talking about, don't we? Do you know why we know mostly? Because the words in my Bible are red. And so I know that he said it. I know the end of the story. But here's just this lady. She's showing up at the well, middle of the day. What does she want there at the well? Water. That's what you get at the well. She's looking for water. And so what does Jesus do? Does he start preaching at her? Yeah, you got problems, lady. Hey, yeah, don't you know how broken you are, right? You know what Jesus starts talking to her about? Water. Because she needs water. He's at the well for water. So now he's talking about just not like ordinary water, but just like living water. What he's doing is he's building a bridge. Because what Jesus, listen, are you listening? What Jesus is about to talk to this woman about is a God who quenches thirst. That's what he's going to talk about. But you know what he's talking about right now? He's building curiosity. Is this lady interested? Does she want to talk? Now listen, that may not have been included in your Sunday school evangelism programs, right? Evangelism when I was growing up was a knock on a door at dinner time for somebody that I didn't know, and really like subtle questions. How's it with your soul? If you were to die today, where would you go? Would you go to hell? You'd go to hell, wouldn't you, right? And it's just like weird and awkward. And some of you are of a certain age that you remember that. And some of you are mortified that that would ever happen, but it happened. What I'm comforted to know is that Jesus didn't do that. He's at a well in the middle of the day at an odd time in an odd place with a seemingly odd person. And what he's doing is checking curiosity. Is she interested? What does she say? Sir, you don't even have a bucket and the well is deep. So where do you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Jacob, are you? He gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did his sons and livestock. Now listen, she's interested, right? Now here's what's important to know, right? Well, we're going to talk about this again, but right now she's just getting interested. Probably a little skeptical, right? Oh, living water, sure. Oh, yeah. Oh, you must be some kind of hotshot, right? Are you better than our ancestors? Or you go, but she didn't say, yeah, thanks, and turn around and go about her business and leave. You know what Jesus is doing? He's fishing. Is he being gentle? Is he being kind? Has he yelled at this woman? Has he told her about all of her offenses? You know what Jesus is doing? He's building a bridge. And you got to know, the lady that we're gonna meet and talk about, there's a good chance that she wouldn't have been considered respectable society, even in Samaria. I mean, when you find the person who's got a reputation, who lives on the bad side of town, right, like you can just bet. And what's important, listen, are you listening? Jesus left the path. Jesus left his disciples to go meet this woman. And when he get there, he was kind to her. He was gentle. He was subtle. He starts talking to her about something that he knew he could identify with her, right? He's checking out on her curiosity. And in verse 13, she's like, is he the, like our Jacob gave us this, right? And Jesus, now he's setting the hook. Everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again, right? Oh yeah, if this water is all you've got, if this well is the only well that you got, you'll be back tomorrow and the next day and the next day. But whoever drinks from the water that I give him will never get thirsty again. Now imagine a woman who spends half of her day alone in the heat of the day at a well, and now you offer her something that says, you're not going to have to live like this anymore. No more shameful, right? No more walks of shame to the well in the middle of the day where everybody sees you going out and they know what they've got. Wouldn't that be great? Oh yeah, what if I could save you from the well, lady? If you just ask me that, in fact, it'll become a well of water springing up for him in eternal life. And guess what? Now she's hooked. Because Jesus put his finger on her thirst. Jesus put his finger on that thing that she wanted, that she needed, that thing that she was bound to. Because as long as that lady was alive, she was going to have to come to the well. Now, you can put on a mask and go in the middle of the day if you want to, but as long as she's alive, she's got to go. Verse 15, sir, this woman said, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to come here. And you can just imagine her. Imagine, have you ever been like, had somebody offer you something and it sounds too good to be true, and all of a sudden you look around at your situation and you're like, this is awful, this sucks, you hate it. Then I won't have to come to this well anymore. Jesus has got it. He's talked about the thing that she wants. And it's not just about the water. It's about the whole entire worldview and life system that's built around what's happening and what's going on at this well. She's not defensive. Jesus has taken this woman who had learned from years of neglect and abuse and mistreatment, so much so that she built her entire life around avoiding the public eye at the well. And Jesus, in one conversation, so disarms her and so brings her defenses down that she's eating out of his hands, right? And you know what? The thing that's good news for me is, right? Like Jesus, he hadn't even shared the Roman road with her, right? He hasn't even shared 4 spiritual laws with her. He hasn't even, like, he's barely even witnessed to her, right? You know what he's just doing? He's just talking to her about grace, about a need, right? And listen, here's the thing. If we see the people in our world as projects that we have to like change their heart and we have to get them to agree to us, that's too much pressure. So let me just give you free, like this March of Freedom. You're free from the pressure of ever having to change anybody's heart. You never have to be the one that closes the deal. You never have to be the one. And so what that means, you know, right? When we're free from having to change hearts, we can be free to simply enjoy the process. And you know what that means? You get to sit down at the table with some unlikely people and just talk to them about what really is breaking their heart. Because you're free. You're free from having to agree with everybody or have everybody agree with you. You're free to sit with people who are wrong. You're free to sit with people who are different from you, and you're free to not even have to make sure that they know everywhere that their doctrine and theology and lifestyle is wrong. Jesus is just sitting with her, talking to her about her thirst. So the question is, those people that are fundamentally different from you, right? Like those people, the people that we put on masks for, right? The people who were worried about rejecting us, the people that were worried about being angry or approving of us. Do you know what makes them tick? Now, let me be real careful. I'm not saying that you need to walk into the house of your abuser and sit down, right, if it's not safe. I'm not sending you back. I'm not sending you out to the wolves. But I'm just talking about in the things that separate and divide us and keep us, the things that make us feel weak and out of control, that we need people to prove. Have you ever gone to the person that you're different from and just understood them? Just listen to them, engaging in the process. See, that's the difference between a conversation and an argument. In a conversation, we truly and legitimately value the opinion and the perspective of the other person that we're listening to. And so Jesus is curious about this. He knows the water. He knows all about that, right? And so that's what he's talking about. He's talking about, hey, what he can offer. So listen, as you go back into your world, as you talk to your friends and your people, right? What do you talk about? If you truly have a spiritual insight. Now, if it's just about, I want somebody to look like me or we got to get everybody kind of on our side. Don't do this, right? Like, and that's fine, but don't say that Jesus wants you to do that either, right? Because what Jesus did was sat with broken people and loved them. He just sat with them and he listened to them and he heard their story, right? And he's about to talk to them about it, but we're going to see kind of how he did that. But what Jesus does is he builds a bridge. Finds people that are different from him and starts building. So how do you build your bridge, right? Well, what's God done in your life? What does this matter to you? Has this made any difference in your life? If so, well, that's what you talk about. Do you have more peace now? Are you growing? Have you seen God show up in a way? Have you seen God restore? Well, what about the first time that you came to Jesus? What was that thing that happened that made you just go, oh my gosh, I need him? Some of you have been baptized recently after one of our services, right? What made you want to go do that? Why did you enter into that? It's okay to just talk about that. And you're just like, I just don't know how the minor prophets. It's okay, don't talk about that. I don't know if it was 6 literal days or 6, right? You know what you can say when somebody's like, do you think? You just go, maybe, who knows? What do you think? Share what you know. Share what God has been doing in your life. Share where you are on your journey. I know several of you have kids right now and you're wondering, are they going to kill me? Am I going to kill them? What are the odds that both of us get out alive? That's really, at the end of the day, that's what I want to know. But listen, I want you to know that Jesus wants to meet you there on that journey. And listen, my mother has a wonderful testimony of how she prayed an entire family out of the bowels of pits of hell, right, and into life, right? But that's her story. That's her journey. And there was about a decade, 15 years in the middle where her story wasn't triumphant in victory. You know what her story at that point was? I am clinging to the hope that my family doesn't die die in their rejection of the Father. But that was her story, and that's what she told. And what I'm going to say is our story is always that we're badly broken and deeply loved. You don't need to be afraid to share the struggles that you have. That's really the only way that we can identify with people. Now, Jesus didn't have brokenness, but you know what Jesus did that we don't always do? Jesus really understood her brokenness. He created her. He knew what his intention and his desire for her was. He knew the life that he intended for her to have, and so he met her where she was, and then what he did is he invited her to respond, and she did. She says, hey, whatever you're selling, I want it. That quenching thing, that thing that would keep me from the shame of having to walk back here and carry my jug in the middle of the day, the shame of everybody who knows my business and knows my story and walk around in that mask that I have to wear, that I'm all right and that everything's okay. Yeah, I want some of that. If you can make that go away, Jesus, if you can make that not happen, then I'll be fine. Then I'll take it. And so we come to verse 16, and what does Jesus say? Go call your husband and come back here, right? Simple enough. Listen, hey, right, when a salesman comes to my store, right, he knows he's not going to want to sit down and talk financing with me because what am I going to tell him? Oh, I'm going to have to talk to my wife, right? Because she's the one that makes the decisions, and that's right. No, we both make the decisions. We do all that. But if she's not there and I can blame it on her, so Jesus just, now he's called to, hey, go get your husband, she says, right? And she says, I don't have a husband. Now listen, stop. Don't read the rest of the story yet. I don't have a husband. What's loaded up in that? Lots of different ways she could answer that. Never been married. Nope, Jesus, just still waiting, right? What is it, right? I don't have a husband. And Jesus says, you have said correctly, I don't have a husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the man that you now have is not your husband. What you have said is true. Now, this is important, what I want to say. We don't get to talk about freedom unless we talk about slavery. You don't get to talk about quenching a thirst for a person who doesn't know that they have a thirst. And what Jesus is not doing here is shaming this woman. And here's how I know, because he's on her turf. He's in her place. He's on grounds where she feels comfortable. And all he's done, all she has to do right now is go, okay, I'll go get him, and turn around and never come back, right? He's not in her living room. This isn't a hard sale. What he's just saying is, I see you. Do you remember a couple weeks ago what he asked Simon the Pharisee? Simon, do you see this woman? There seem to be a lot of women get overlooked in the scriptures, don't there? What he wants this woman at the well in the middle of the day, running and hiding, searching for something to quench her, he wants her to know, I see you. Jesus wants her to know that she is seen, that he's not there caught off guard. But again, he wants to put his finger, he wants to set her free. But if we're going to talk about freedom, we have to talk about baggage. Sir, the woman replied, I see that you are a prophet. You mean because you've never met me and you've told me the details of my life? Yeah, good, right? I can tell that you know some things, right? And what does she do? Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews say that the place to worship is in Jerusalem. This is what we call sabotage. And listen, you've probably known some people that have been hurt and wounded, and you may be this person who is so wounded and so hurt that anytime anybody gets close to you in any way, you begin trying to blow it up so that you can say, see? Well, she's talking about differences. She's giving Jesus an out. Oh, well, Jesus, you must be mistaken because I'm a Samaritan, and so our doctrine is different. Our theology is different. See, we don't agree on that issue, Jesus, so go ahead and just get rid of me. I'm sure I'm not a candidate. I'm sure I don't qualify for your living water. I'm sure I'm going to have to keep coming back to this stinking well day after day because it's never worked out before. And Jesus, I'm sure you're just going to be like everyone else and let me down, so let's just go get it over with. You ever been there? But listen, Jesus has built a bridge. Jesus has established that this lady is thirsty. And if he's true, if he's got living water and he's encountered a thirsty woman, you can't just walk away from that. See, once you really identify the needs in another person, it becomes really difficult, really hard to walk away, right? So Jesus is saying, by the way, that's why you got to go to lunch. Some of you got to go to lunch with liberals or with conservatives or wherever you go, or with people who make a lot of money or people who are poor, whoever the other guy is, right? So you just got to go to lunch with him because you got to know what bridge to build. You got to know what's that thing behind the thing, not the big angry thing that's on the front that you can use to sabotage the thing the whole time. You got to get down and you got to know, what are they thirsty for? Is it acceptance? Is it love? Is it stability? Is it control? Because listen, Jesus offers all of that. No one else does. I mean, everyone will promise it. That was what our summer series about idols was. Lots of people promise it, but only Jesus really delivers. So he's not going to be put off easily. And listen, you shouldn't either. You're not selling yourself, you're selling Jesus. You're talking about living water to thirsty people. So verse 23. No, she said, so we got to do this. So she's keeping it spiritual, but she's definitely like pushing away, right? So verse 23. An hour is coming and is now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. Yes, the Father wants such people to worship him, right? We talked last week about the Spirit as this will, right? Like the thing that we choose, right? And so he's saying, Father's looking for people who will choose to submit to him and what he offers more than the way that sends you to the well, right? You have to choose. You have to choose to set down the idols. You have to choose to set down the mask. You have to choose to be vulnerable. You have to choose to accept that you're not going to like all the things that Jesus tells you. You're going to have to choose to accept him, even though he's going to ask you from things that you are certain you can't possibly let go of. He's going to ask you to build your life, your entire life, every decision, every moment around him and trusting him and receiving his goodness and his love, even if it costs you everything else. He's looking for those who will worship him in spirit and in truth. And let that decision play out. It's just saying, Lord, take what you want. Take my insecurity. And it's easy to go, Lord, I want you to take my insecurity. Then he's going to say, great, if you don't want to be insecure, then you're just going to have to trust that person. Oh, I could never do that. What if they hurt me? No, they're going to hurt you. Listen, people are going to hurt you. It's awful, it's terrible. When they do, Jesus wants to comfort you and console you. And the people that hurt you, Jesus wants to heal them and redeem them and restore them. That's what he's working all throughout, right? So he's saying, like, he wants those who will worship him in spirit, who will choose him, but those who also will follow him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship him in spirit and truth. And the woman said, I know that the Messiah is coming. And this is hopeful. She's like, could this be the one, right? Who is called the Christ. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. And Jesus told her, I, the one speaking to you, am he. Listen, we just read that like it's just an ordinary when we're read it. This is the first time that Jesus disclosed himself as God to a foreign Samaritan woman with a background of 5 husbands and living in sin right now, right? Listen, that's who Jesus chooses. That's where Jesus goes. That's who Jesus shares his story with, because he's free. And if we are free, and when we are free, and as we walk towards freedom, we will increasingly find ourselves in the places that Jesus goes. And it will be increasingly around uncomfortable making people. People that are awkward and different and who don't agree with us and who say all kinds of crazy, weird things, right? But we're free. Our who we are isn't determined by them. It's not even ultimately for them. But the reality is, as we go to the world, is you can't talk about freedom without addressing sin. But you shouldn't talk about sin without talking about freedom. If we think that the world is gone to hell, if we think that the sins of one person or one group of people are ruining and destroying ourselves or the church or whatever, we need to get real clear on what exactly it is that Jesus is calling them to, and us. What kind of freedom does he want for us? And what you do is you tell your story. Because what happens when people catch a vision of freedom is amazing. Listen, real quick, I'm going to read 2 passages, verse 28. The woman left her water jar and she went down and she told the people. That's what she came for. She forgot. She forgot how thirsty she was when she met Jesus. What did she say? Come see a man who told me everything I ever did. She's not ashamed anymore, is she? Did anything about her life change? Had anything about her life different? The only thing that's different in her life at this point is that she met Jesus. And you know what Jesus did? Jesus gave her a new way of thinking about her failure. Sure, you're badly broken, but you're also deeply loved. If our message is only that you're broken, you're broken, you're broken, all kinds of resistance. If our message is only you're loved, you're loved, you're loved, yeah, but so what? It's because I'm so awesome, right? It's got to be both. You're broken and you're loved. And when we get that, all of a sudden people aren't ashamed anymore. You're not ashamed anymore. You're free. And so she runs back into the very town that she was hiding from, bragging about this man that she had met in verse 39. Now, many Samaritans from that town believed in him because of what the woman said when she testified. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they asked him to stay with them, and he stayed there 2 days, and many more believed of what he said. Jesus expressed his freedom by giving away grace. Now, anything else that our freedom counts, that drives us to, that doesn't involve the radical giving of grace, it may be some manner and measure of freedom, but it is not the spiritual freedom that Jesus offers. Listen, Matthew chapter 10, verse 7 and 8, Jesus talking to his disciples, as you go, proclaim the kingdom of heaven has come near. Tell people. That's our message. Tell them that the kingdom is here. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse those with leprosy, drive out demons. But listen, are you listening? If we're going to do those things, you know what that means? That means that we got to go to places where people are sick. That means we got to be where they're broken. It says, raise the dead. That means we got to go to places where there is spiritual death, and we got to be there, right? Cleanse with leprosy. Those who are untouchable, those who live outside the camp because they're not allowed in, those who suffer under the weight of stigma, go to them with a message. And what does he say? Freely you have received, freely give. See, the thing is, we forget that we're the woman. We're that woman who was outside, who was covered in shame, going to a broken well, the well of sex, the well of approval, the well of chasing whatever it is. We keep going back day after day and week after week, and Jesus just stands there and goes, are you tired yet? You tired of carrying that jug in the noonday heat, heavy, full of water? Wouldn't you rather be quenched? Wouldn't you rather have all of that? And so what do we give? We give people the dignity of having a relationship without expectations. They are not projects. They are not goals. They are people. We give people a compelling vision of a life that's free. And we show them. We demonstrate that life. We give people our story. Not of how good we are, not of how perfect we are, not of how we have it figured out, but of how a loving God meets us in the midst of our brokenness. And then we give people an invitation. Will you join me on this journey? Not a journey to perfection, not a journey to endless wealth, not a journey to comfort, not a journey where everything goes wonderfully every day, a journey where no tear that you have ever wept is fully and finally redeemed, where no hurt is ever wasted, and where every instant of suffering you have ever felt is worth it. It means something. That's what Jesus invites you into. That's what he invites us to. And so as they lead us, my invitation is just to reflect. Are you free? Who are those unlikely people and unlikely places that Jesus is leading you to? Why are you nervous? It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. Put your finger on it. Why, Lord? What am I afraid of losing in that moment? Because he'll call us and he'll send us to places where there's fruit, where we get to see him do amazing, unbelievable things. So as they lead us, search your heart.
Let me be filled with kindness and compassion for the one for whom you loved and gave your son for humanity. Increase my love and help me to love with open arms like you let all my life tell of who you are, and the wonder of your never-ending love. Oh, let all my life tell of who you are, that you're wonderful and such a good Father, that you're wonderful and such a good Father. So help me to love with open arms like you do, a love that erases all the lines and sees the truth. Oh, that when they look in my eyes, they would see you. Even in just a smile, they would feel the Father's love. Even in just a smile, they would feel the Father's love.
I pray that this would be a place where people feel your love, Father. And I acknowledge that begins with me. Help me to know and to sense that I'm loved. And Father, let me overflow. I pray that and listen, when you start loving unlovely people, people get uncomfortable and they're going to tell me it's not okay, I can't do that, right? Help me to just follow you. And when I start talking to unlovely people about sin and the things that keep us bound and broken, they're not going to like that. Let me do it anyway. Father, help me to grasp your love for the purpose of giving it away. And I pray for those in here today who maybe they're not sure that they're loved. They don't feel it. They don't sense it. I pray, Father, that in a way that is real and authentic to them, they would have a moment of encounter with your grace and with your peace, and that you would set them free. And I pray that your church would seek out, we would go out of our way to find the people that are lost, that are looking, that are searching. And our job is not to convince anyone. Our job is to check for spiritually curious people and to tell them about the God who has set us free. So may we walk in freedom. May we walk in the integrity of a well-ordered soul. And may our choices and our worship bring you glory. Jesus, that's our desire. We pray all of these things for your glory. And so we ask in your name. Amen. Thank you for being here this morning. This is Greg and Kathy. They are part of our prayer team. If you need prayer today, if you want someone to just pray with you, will you come up and see them, talk to them? Tell them your story. Don't tell them your story. That's fine. They just love to pray, and we believe in prayer. So thank you for being here. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance and give you peace.